Just about sailing March. I'm going to call it March even if it isn't March, because this is the final part, part 3 of the rudder, a job I wasn't even supposed to be doing in the first place. But anyway, this should be the easy part because it's basically putting stuff back together. I'm sure it won't be, but I've got all the different components. So I've got one of these, which is the rudder stock, obviously, the new one. I've got 2 of these, which are the skins from the old rudder that I've taken off, and I've got one of these. Not sure if I'm going to use this. This is the thing on the back. But obviously one of the things I hadn't quite finished last time is the test. I didn't have a proper mixer, which I've now got, a proper sort of mixing thing. And I got the temperature slightly wrong with the epoxy, with the expanded epoxy, so it said you really need to whisk it up and keep it at the right temperature. And as you can see, when you do that, it does expand nicely. This is 100 times speeded up, and it's 1 to 4. So with the calculations, with the right maths, it will work. You'll notice actually there's quite a lot of air bubbles in here from the whisking, but there is a way of getting around that, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. Having kind of done this and figured out that the foam does work, what I wanted to do was to have another test with my mock-up rudder before actually getting down to doing the actual construction. So let's have a look at this, and then we'll move on to actually putting the rudder together. Right, so I couldn't resist having another go at this to actually see this expanding, and hopefully this time I've actually got my maths right a little bit. So so camera set up, what could possibly go wrong? Right, so what I'm doing is I'm pouring it through a sort of a sieve thing, which apparently helps to get the bubbles out from the whisking and gives you a more consistent mix. And as you can see, there's a lot more than there was last time, and I'm spreading it reasonably evenly. I had considered putting more at the thick end and see what happened, but I kind of want to see how it fills out, how it spreads. And I've got the 2 cameras on here. Sorry about the red on the right hand side, that will disappear in a minute. I think it's something to do with the white balance, which I should have set on a little GoPro thing. And then I'm putting the clear perspex on the top to kind of emulate what will happen when I put the actual rudder together. There is one hole drilled in the top to let the air out. I'd be interested to see, because I want to see sort of how powerfully it pushes up. And then this is speeded up. It's actually speeded up 100 times, so you can see this very different from previously. And I have got the, having all the conditions correct makes a massive difference. So I'm glad that I did this. I mean, let's be honest, it's quite fun to watch foam in fast motion speeded up, but it's quite nice to know that this is actually what's going to be happening inside the rudder when I do the real thing. The battery on the camera on the left kind of gave up very shortly, so I didn't. So what I've done is I've just sort of left a still at the end, but you can see the other bit filling right up to the top. So very happy with this, very successful. So this is about 12 hours afterwards. I've let it sort of run its course. You can see where it's squished through the hole, a tiny little bit around here, and if you notice on the video earlier I hadn't put this down, but a lot of people have asked about the pressure, whether this is going to sort of push the side of the rudder skin, the GLP skin off. It is a low pressure foaming. I did make deliberately this time 10% more than I actually needed, and that's worked out well. I think that's a 100% successful experiment. So I shall pop that in the heating box, and the next time you see this you won't see it because it will be happening inside a rudder invisibly. Okay, so cleared all the rest of the rubbish out from inside the rudder yesterday. Lovely sunny day, and now it's raining, so can't do anything outside, so it's going to be down to doing some fiberglassing inside. Lots of grinding out of both the rest of the concrete that was stuck to the side and also the very, very dry, sort of flaky chop strand matting. Didn't video any of it, but this is this goes on the angle grinder. Probably the best tool in the world. Absolutely fantastic. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of this because this was really good. This really hacks through the stuff. I prefer using it to the actual grinding disc. But anyway, welcome to Saturday Morning Kitchen. I've got my rudder. I've got 10 metres by 1.5 metres of 450 biaxial fiberglass. Got all the West Systems stuff I need. I've got loads and loads of peel ply. All the gear, no idea. No, actually I'm quite looking forward to doing this. I quite like doing fiberglassing works. Okay, so I'm going to put some reinforcement inside this as well. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is the rudder stock, and I've just kind of pushed it up to the edge. In fact, when I finally line it up, the back of this rudder needs to be in the middle of that. I've marked a little mark, 1¼ inches from there, which is the amount that this sticks out. And as some of you may remember, I do have the original plans, which is very handy. So I'm literally just going to draw around the tangs, just so I know where they will be on the final thing. And as I say, they will actually poke in about, well, they'll poke in exactly ½ inch more in that direction. So we've got that marked up. Right, so mix up a little batch of resin. Obviously very important, as always, to wet this out thoroughly. This is to give, obviously, to let it soak in and give the best possible mechanical bond. You don't have to do it, but I always do, and it's recommended. As is the tradition with these things, let's speed this up. So this is continuing to wet out the surface. And then mixing up some 404 to put the fillets in the little corners, because fiberglass doesn't like 90-degree bends, and this just gives a nice kind of smooth surface on the side. Again, it's probably all belt and braces stuff, but why not? And I quite enjoy doing fiberglassy type stuff. And the 450 biaxial, I decided just to do one sheet, so wet this out nicely. And then just stick it down with a scrapey thing. And then again, a bit more belt and braces, putting these things, literally just to sort of spread the load of the tank. So starting off with a bigger one and then a slightly smaller one, and then finish off with a smaller one on top. And then of course, there's something wrong with the battery in my camera, because this is the second time it's done this. It says that there's loads of charge left, and then it just stops. So unfortunately at this point, before I put the peel ply on and carry on, it just died. That's technology for you. There's something nice about peeling off peel ply. This is completely dried now. And I did really squish with one of the smoothing things, the epoxy, into this. Completely making this up as I'm going along. This is the the back that went around the rudder stock, and I was kind of hoping to reuse it, but as I think you can see if I look at that, the actual centre bit where the stock went into is kind of off centre a little bit, and that always irked me. I noticed it before I got it off. It's also in pretty bad condition, so I was thinking that maybe I could grind the outside down, but the trouble with that, again, if we look at here, you can really see how off centre it is. I'd be kind of grinding through the fiberglass, and anyway, so the decision is to make a new one. So let's just make this up as we go along. I've got a 1-inch, I think it's just curtain rod or something, and I'm going to fiberglass around the outside to make a sort of a bit of more of a semicircle, and then pack some fill around that, and then fiberglass around the outside of that again. How I'm going to do that, no idea. This is completely Heath Robinson-esque. I've actually got different layers of, I've got a layer of plastic, this is obviously stock fiberglass sticking, going down here underneath, and then wrapping back around here, and another layer over there. So 4 layers of fiberglass and the ubiquitous peel ply. Right, don't know if this is going to work. I've mixed up some 406 thickened epoxy and I've got this sort of mould thing, so I'm going to put the 406 on and kind of drag this along and see if I can. This is 40mm and the outside diameter is just slightly smaller than what I actually want, so by getting it to the inside diameter it'll leave me enough for the final layers of fiberglass, but I'm literally making this up, so no idea if this is going to work or not. Right, a couple of fairly glaring errors there which you might have spotted. I wetted it out first, but then I didn't give it enough time to get sort of tacky. You really need to leave it quite some time if you're going to put the filler on top of it. I knew this because otherwise what happens is a bit like putting ball bearings onto a slidey, so it all goes very slidey. And secondly, I didn't make the mix quite peanut buttery, quite thick enough. So, but anyway, I kind of got it on. This didn't work as well as I wanted to, but anyway, so I put peel ply on the top, and this actually is quite nice. This gives me a better opportunity to really kind of smooth it out. So yet another use for peel ply is to cover up stupid mistakes. Not quite according to plan, but I have pretty much got the diameter that I was after. So, yeah. Given that I didn't know whether it was going to work at all, the fact that it's worked even a bit, and it's all fun, isn't it? Isn't it? Excellent. Right, let's leave that for a million hours and wait for it to dry. Okay, so I'm now sort of 15 minutes or whatever we are on, and I'm not an awful lot much further in, as much as I've still got 2 of these, although there is a nice fiberglass lining which will give a better bond to the epoxy expanding foam, some strengthening stuff, and I've got a new one of these that I need to kind of trim out and so on. So, and obviously I've got the new stock. So the next stage is to try and get to the point that I would have been at had I have done the sensible thing, which was to make a mould in the first place. need to glue this to one of the sides so that it's in the right position, and I'm not sure how to do that. So shout your answers at the screen. You never know, that might work. There might be some strange gap in the space-time continuum, and let's figure out how to do this next bit. Right, so thanks for shouting at the screen, that was very useful. Approximately half of you were shouting, it doesn't really matter, just cover it with loads of epoxy, and the other half were saying make a really neat sort of mitered joint here so this slots on nicely. Right, so you can see this sort of sitting on top of here, and the deal is that this line here, it kind of needs to go down to about that level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chamfer a little bit off the inside of the rudder and chamfer a bit off here, so that I've got a nice overlap. And I am going to put loads of epoxy on one side. So that's not bad for a first little go round with the sanding machine. I haven't got it exactly level, but I can adjust that. Okay, it's all glued up and dried now, epoxied up. It was a bit dark last night when I did this, so I didn't video it, but it's probably just worth just very quickly saying how I made sure everything was lined up. You need a single reference point, and this bit at the end of the rudder, where it kind of curves round, I'll show you a little insert up here just so you're clear as to what that bit is. That's my reference point. I'm using this spacer to say how far up this should go, to make sure that it's parallel with the bottom surface. I use a spirit level, and to make sure it's central, what I've done is I've clamped it. There's a natural V in the clamp, so this tube is obviously going to follow the middle of it. Right, so here we are, rudder's all sorted, all back on again. No need to show anything else because the rest of it was just easy as pie, although I've got an idea I might have forgotten to do something. So as you can see, right, no, what I'm actually doing here is just checking it out with this back bit on, that everything's going to fit, and check out the thickness of fiberglass I want to put around there before I actually commit to doing anything. So this is kind of like the dry fit, and actually I'm quite pleased with this. Let me show you something. Now the bit that I was most worried about was that the gap here was not going to be parallel along there, because I haven't particularly measured this carefully, and it's not perfect, but do you know what? That is absolutely good enough. I have just clipped the other side together just to double check that all the clearances and so on, so fabulous. Right, okay, so this is the rudder stock, and what I'm hoping is I can kind of push this in here. Oh wow. So here's the dry fit before gluing it out, and what I've done is I've propped up these two tangs, and I'm going to glue this one first, and there's only a tiny amount between the we're talking about 1/8 of an inch or so between the tang and the fiberglass, and obviously it's critical to get this right, otherwise the rudder's going to be askew. So I've checked it with every way I can. I've drawn lines on things against the edge, made sure that's in the middle. I've propped up this side of the tiller, and then measured that the tangs are horizontal. I've checked the 45 degrees on the steering. I've done kind of a million different cross formulations and ways, and you know what, it's still going to be slightly off, isn't it? But so what I'm going to do now is I'm literally going to leave it, have a cup of tea, have something to eat, make sure my blood sugar levels are up. Then I'm going to glue. Well, anyway, we'll see. You'll see. I will show you. Oh, why have I never done this before? This is so easy. So you might have heard me use the term belt and braces a couple of times in this video already. I'd rather have too much than too little. So the reason for this is simply I'm following, if you look at the previous video where I'm testing stuff out, there's in the description I put a link to Jeffer, the Danish company who do rudders professionally, and they do this. So right, let's leave that overnight, see what happens, do the other two tomorrow or the next day. Now the secret obviously of this is knowing when to stop and knowing when it's, unfortunately I don't know that secret, so I'm actually going to put another piece of epoxy over the top, so when I put the two skins together there isn't a kind of gap up here. My alternative was to put sort of blobs and then squish it all together, but I've decided it would actually be easier, believe it or not, to do just a little bit more preparation. So let's have a look. You know I'm a great fan of this stuff. Just drape this over here. It's difficult to tell, but that seems to be squishing it down, so I'm hoping for a nice straight edge with the peel pry dimples and stuff in it. Obviously if it's not quite right I can change it, but enough of this. Let's we want to get on to the more exciting bit, don't we? So let's revisit this once everything is prepped and ready for pouring the epoxy. Right, so people with sailboats know how this works. Basically a 2-hour job to change the bushes on the rudder turns out to be a 2-3 month job to change the rudder stock, and a simple job to take this apart, which was going to feature one video turned into 3, taking it apart, which took a lot longer, etc. But anyway, stuff takes longer. So at the beginning of this video I said, right, this is the final video, and of course it's not the final video because I want to get this out today. Today being, well, today actually is April Fool's Day, quite appropriate, I just realised that, because I want to get this out in March. There's a bit of finishing off to do, so the weather hasn't been good, I need to do a bit of sanding, a bit of finessing and so on. So the next video, hopefully it really is just sticking these things back together, filling it with the epoxy foam, and then finessing it, wrapping it with, you know, all that sort of stuff. So we'll have a look at that next time, so apologies for that, you've got a 4th video to watch, but you know what, I've really enjoyed this. I'm enjoying every second of doing this. I don't know why, it's quite bizarre, but anyway, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, which, can I promise it's going to be the last one to do with the rudder? Who knows, something else might happen. No, I think it's going to be the last one. Anyway, see you then, cheers, bye.